As the world quiets down and a gentle hush settles over the landscape of your day, come with me. Let us journey together, not across land or sea, but into the heart of a story whispered through the sacred pages of Scripture. Tonight, we will walk through a timeless tale of power and vulnerability, of pride and profound humility, and of a fragile hope that bloomed in the most unexpected of places. It is a story that tenderly reminds us that even when we feel isolated in our deepest struggles, the grace of God is always searching for a way to meet us. If this time of reflection and storytelling brings a measure of peace to your soul, we gently invite you to express it with a like and perhaps subscribe to our channel. Your quiet act of connection helps us to share this message of faith and tranquility with other souls seeking a peaceful harbor in the night. Now, find your place of rest. Let a soft breath release the day's weight, letting go of all that was and all that has yet to be. In this sacred quiet, let us turn our hearts heavenward for just a moment, breathing deeply and opening our minds to the wisdom, the comfort, and the gentle wonders that unfold within God's living Word. Your journey tonight begins in a land of baked earth and ancient formidable cities, a place northeast of Israel's familiar hills. You find yourself in the kingdom of Aram, a realm known to history as Syria, and its heart beats strongest within the magnificent sun-drenched walls of Damascus. The air here is different. It is dry, carrying the mingled scents of cedar wood from Lebanon, the distant aroma of roasting nuts from a bustling marketplace, and the sweet, almost intoxicating perfume of apricot and pomegranate orchards that flourish where the rivers Barada and Awage bring life to the desert. The city itself hums not with chaos, but with a deep, resonant thrum of power and confidence. This is a nation at the apex of its influence, a center of trade culture and military might. And in this city of strength, your attention settles upon a single, sprawling estate. It is a home built not merely of stone and timber, but of victory and royal favor. This is the residence of the man who embodies the very spirit of Aram's power. His name is Naaman. In the soft, guttural sounds of the Aramaic tongue, his name speaks of pleasantness, of grace, a gentle name for a man whose life is defined by the harsh realities of war. You see him now, standing in the great central courtyard of his home, a space of meticulously swept stone and shaded porticos. The late afternoon sun of the Near East casts long shadows, turning the dust motes dancing in the air into a shower of liquid gold. Naaman is the commander of the entire Aramean army. He is not just a soldier, he is the soldier, a brilliant strategist and a fearsome warrior whose courage on the battlefield has brought deliverance and security to his people. You can see it in the way he stands, a posture of innate, unshakable authority. You can hear it in his voice, a low baritone, accustomed to giving commands that are instantly obeyed, a voice that has rallied armies and silenced the protestations of kings. The king of Aram himself, Ben-Hadad, regards Naaman not simply as a subject, but as his own right arm, the very instrument of his will and the guarantor of his throne. To the people of Damascus, from the merchants in the souk to the priests in the temples of Hadad Rimmon, Naaman is a living legend, the shield of the kingdom. He possesses everything a man of his era could ever dream of. His storehouses overflow with wealth, the spoils of countless campaigns. His name is spoken with a reverence bordering on awe in the courts of power. His family is secure, his reputation immaculate. He is the very picture of success, a monument of human achievement, carved from the rock of his own strength and valor. But you are invited to look closer, to see past the polished bronze of his reputation, to look beyond the confident, steady gaze that has faced down entire armies. You are invited into the quiet, hidden space behind the public man. For beneath the fine embroidered linen of his tunic, concealed from the eyes of his soldiers, his servants, and even his king, Naaman, carries a devastating, chilling secret. It is a secret that silently mocks his power, renders his wealth worthless, and isolates his soul in a prison of quiet terror. Naaman has leprosy. In the language of his time, the word is Serath. It is a word heavy with dread, a term that encompasses a range of skin diseases, each one believed to be a mark of profound impurity. Let your mind step with him as he leaves the open courtyard and enters the cool, shadowed interior of his private chambers. The sounds of the city fade, replaced by a heavy silence. Here, away from the adoring gaze of the world, the performance ends. You witness the truth as he unclasps the leather straps of his officer's tunic. And there, on the skin of this mighty warrior, this paragon of strength, is the evidence of his creeping doom. It may not yet be the disfiguring plague of popular imagination. Perhaps it is not yet on his face or hands where it cannot be hidden. It may be a constellation of chalk-white patches on his chest or a section of skin on his back that has lost all feeling, a dead spot on a living man. Perhaps it is a strange, persistent rash that glistens unnaturally, a creeping frost that no warmth can melt. Whatever its form, it is there. It is undeniable. It is a secret winter blooming on his skin, a slow, inexorable tide that he knows will one day consume him entirely. It is difficult for us in our modern world to grasp the full weight of this diagnosis. Leprosy in the ancient Near East was not merely a medical condition. It was a sentence of death delivered in slow, agonizing installments. It was considered a curse from the gods, a visible sign of some hidden sin or divine disfavor. A person afflicted with it was deemed unclean ritually and physically. To have leprosy was to be slowly, methodically erased from the community. It meant the loss of family, the loss of work, the loss of worship. A leper could not enter the city gates without shouting, "Unclean, unclean," to warn others away. They became untouchable exiles in their own land, living ghosts, haunting the periphery of society. Now consider the profound, soul-crushing irony of Naaman's existence. This is a man who commands legions, yet he cannot command the traitorous cells of his own body. He is a man who has brought whole nations to their knees, yet he is being brought to his knees by a silent, microscopic malady. He is surrounded by the luxuries of an empire, yet he would trade all the gold in Damascus for a single patch of healthy skin. Every morning is a ritual of dread. He wakes before the sun, not to plan a battle, but to examine his body in the first pale light, his heart a cold stone in his chest as he searches for new signs of the disease's advance. Every day is a masterpiece of deception as he carefully binds his afflicted areas, dons his heavy robes, and presents to the world the flawless facade of the invincible commander, while inwardly his spirit is unraveling. His very name, Naaman Pleasantness, has become a source of private, bitter mockery. What pleasantness is there in this constant gnawing fear? What grace is there in this slow, humiliating decay? You can almost feel the weight of his secret. It is a physical burden, as real as the armor he wears into battle. In this, Naaman's story touches a deep and universal human chord. We all, in our own way, carry hidden wounds. We all have places of brokenness that we conceal from the world, vulnerabilities that we fear would undo us if they were ever brought into the light. Naaman's story begins here in this place of profound contradiction, a quiet lesson that our greatest titles and worldly successes are fragile shelters against the fundamental frailties of the human condition. Our true need is rarely for more power or more wealth, but for a healing that lies far beyond the reach of our own hands. In the vast, intricate ecosystem of his household, a world of stewards, cooks, guards, and attendants, life continues with its daily rhythms, oblivious to the commander's silent agony. The sounds of grinding grain, of women laughing by the well, of children playing games in the shade, all these normal, beautiful signs of life must sound to Naaman like a lament for a world from which he is slowly being banished. He is the master of this entire domain, yet he is a prisoner within it. But in the midst of this grand yet sorrowful household, you notice a figure who seems almost invisible. She is not a person of power or status. She holds no rank commands, no one, and owns nothing. She is a young girl, an Israelite, a captive from one of Aram's many raids across the border into the northern kingdom of Israel. Her name is lost to history, a testament to her lowly position. She is a servant, and more than that, a slave assigned to serve Naaman's own wife. Her life has been marked by tragedy. She was torn from her home, her family, her land, her God. She has every reason to be bitter, to hate her captors, to rejoice in the secret suffering of the very commander whose army destroyed her old life. You see her moving through the house, quiet and diligent. Perhaps she is fetching water, or helping her mistress with her robes, or brushing her long dark hair. Her voice is seldom heard. She is a shadow in the background of this powerful family's life. And yet, it is from this place of utter powerlessness, from this small, seemingly insignificant girl, that the first glimmer of impossible hope will emerge. She watches her mistress, and she surely sees the worry etched around the lady's eyes, the deep sadness that even the splendor of their home cannot erase. She knows, as servants often do, the true state of the house. She knows about the master's illness. She hears the whispered consultations with physicians from Egypt and Babylon, the priests who burn incense and chant incantations to their gods, all to no avail. The air in the house is thick with a desperate, failing search for a cure. And one day, this young girl dares to speak. Imagine the scene. Perhaps her mistress is sitting alone, gazing out a window, her shoulders slumped with the weight of her husband's secret. The girl approaches her heart, likely pounding in her chest. To speak out of turn, to offer an unsolicited opinion, is a risk for someone in her position. But what she says is not born of arrogance or presumption. It is born of a faith that she has carried with her from her homeland, a faith that has survived the trauma of her capture and the loneliness of her servitude. With a soft, clear voice, she says to her mistress, "If only my Lord were with the prophet who is in Samaria, for he would heal him of his leprosy." Think of these words. They are so simple, yet so revolutionary. They are a tiny seed of faith planted in the barren soil of despair. She doesn't offer a complicated theological argument. She doesn't speak of armies or kings or power. She speaks of a single man, a prophet in a city in her own conquered land. Samaria, the capital of the northern kingdom of Israel, was a rival to Damascus. To the Arameans, it was enemy territory. And the man she speaks of is not a king or a general, but a prophet, a strange, often unpredictable man of God. Herein lies another gentle, profound lesson. Hope does not always announce itself with a trumpet blast. Sometimes it comes as a quiet whisper from the most humble and overlooked of sources. God often chooses the weak to confound the strong, the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. This slave girl, who has lost everything, still possesses the one thing Naaman, in all his power, lacks: a connection to the true and living God who can do what no man can. Her faith was not extinguished by her suffering. Perhaps in some mysterious way, it was refined by it. She could have been consumed by a desire for revenge, but instead she chose compassion. She looked upon the suffering of her captor, the man who represented her own people's oppression, and she offered him the only gift she had, the gift of a miraculous life-altering hope. Her words hang in the air, a fragile possibility in a room heavy with hopelessness. And Naaman's wife, desperate for any solution, listens. She does not dismiss the girl's words as the fanciful ramblings of a child. In the depths of our desperation, our hearts often become more open. When all the avenues of human power and wisdom have been exhausted, we become willing to consider paths we would have previously scorned. The word of a lowly slave girl is carried from the wife to the mighty commander. And Naaman, the great general, the man of action and pragmatism, a man who worships the gods of Aram, hears the report. He hears of a prophet in an enemy land who can supposedly cure the incurable. It is a whisper of a chance, a thread of light in an ever-darkening world. And for a man with nothing left to lose, a whisper is enough. The commander, whose life has been a testament to his own strength, is about to embark on a journey that will require him to set aside that strength and seek help from a completely foreign and to him alien source of power. The great machinery of the Aramean state is about to be set in motion by the simple, faithful words of a single, nameless, captive girl. The first step toward healing has been taken not by a mighty warrior's sword, but by a servant's humble testimony. And you are there at the very beginning, witnessing the moment when desperation cracks open the door to divine possibility. The young girl's words do not fade. Instead, they take root in the desperate soil of Naaman's heart. The commander, a man accustomed to intricate battle plans and verifiable intelligence, now weighs the testimony of a foreign slave girl. You are there, in the quiet council of his own mind, a space far more tumultuous than any battlefield. On one side, there is the voice of reason, of military pragmatism, whispering that this is folly. To travel to the capital of a rival kingdom based on a child's story about a so-called prophet, it is absurd. The gods of Aram have failed. The most learned physicians of the known world have failed. What could this one man in this lesser kingdom possibly do it? Is a risk, a potential humiliation on an international scale. But on the other side, a more powerful voice speaks. It is the voice of a man at the end of his rope. It is the primal cry of the soul for healing, for restoration, for a future not defined by slow decay. He looks at his skin in the secrecy of his chambers and knows that the path of reason has led him to a dead end. The absurd, the illogical, the path of faith. It is the only path he has not yet tried. And so the decision is made. The great general will submit himself to this fragile whispered hope. But a man like Naaman does not simply slip away in the night. His every move is a matter of state. His plan, therefore, is not that of a humble pilgrim, but of a great commander. He approaches his own king Ben-Hadad, the ruler of Aram. Imagine the scene in the royal court of Damascus. Sunlight streams through high latticed windows, illuminating the opulent throne room, a space of carved ivory gilded cedar, and rich tapestries depicting the victories of the kingdom victories, won by the very man who now stands before the throne. Naaman, his voice steady, his posture betraying none of his inner turmoil, relays the story. "Thus and so," said the girl from the land of Israel. He presents it as a piece of intelligence, a potential strategic solution to a personal crisis that affects the state. King Ben-Hadad listens intently. Naaman is his greatest asset, the pillar of his military security. The commander's health is a matter of national importance. The king does not laugh or dismiss the idea. He is a pragmatist like his general. If there is a chance, any chance, it must be pursued. His response is immediate and decisive. "Go," then he commands, "and I will send a letter to the king of Israel." Here you witness a crucial moment of misunderstanding that will shape everything to come. Both Naaman and his king approach this divine quest through the only lens they know, the lens of human power, politics, and commerce. They assume that a miracle, like a treaty or a trade agreement, can be arranged between two kings. They believe healing can be commissioned, that a prophet is a national resource. The king of Israel can simply deploy upon request. They cannot conceive of a power that operates outside these familiar structures. And so the preparations begin. And what preparations they are! This will not be the journey of a humble seeker. It is a state procession, a moving treasury designed to impress, to influence, and to purchase a cure. You watch as the servants in Naaman's household, and indeed the officials of the royal court, begin to assemble the offering. First, the silver. 10 talents of silver. A single talent was a massive unit of weight, perhaps 75 pounds or more. You can almost feel the strain as the heavy sacks, filled with gleaming polished pieces of silver, are loaded onto the backs of sturdy pack animals. This is a fortune enough to buy a vast estate or fund a small army. Then comes the gold. 6,000 shekels of gold. Not rough nuggets, but carefully weighed and measured pieces, the currency of kings. The gold glints and flashes in the sun, a river of pure concentrated wealth. It is a staggering sum, a treasure fit for a king's ransom. It is Naaman's worldly power made tangible, his attempt to quantify the value of his own life and pay the price for its restoration. It is a very human impulse. When we are faced with a problem beyond our solving, we often try to throw our resources at it, believing that enough money, enough influence, enough effort can bend any reality to our will. Naaman is preparing to pay for his miracle. And finally, there are the garments. 10 changes of clothing. But you must understand what this meant in the ancient world. These are not simple tunics. These are festival garments, robes of state meticulously crafted from the finest Babylonian linen and Egyptian cotton dyed in the deep, rich purples of Tyre and the brilliant crimsons of the Levant. They are intricately embroidered with threads of gold and silver, each one a work of art, a symbol of supreme status and honor. To give such a garment was an act of immense respect and favor. To give 10 was an offering of almost unimaginable prestige. The caravan is now assembled in the great square before Naaman's estate. It is a sight to behold. It is less a pilgrimage and more a military expedition. At its head is Naaman himself, seated in his personal war chariot, a vehicle of polished wood and gleaming bronze, pulled by 2 of the finest stallions from the royal stables. Their harnesses jingle with every impatient toss of their heads. Around him are his personal attendants and a contingent of armed guards, their spears and shields glittering in the sunlight. Their presence is a clear message. This is the commander of Aram traveling on official business. Behind them come the pack mules laden with the chests of gold and silver and the carefully wrapped sets of clothing. The entire procession is a spectacle of wealth and power, a river of Aramean might flowing out of the gates of Damascus. As the journey begins, you take a place unseen in Naaman's chariot. You feel the rumble of the wheels on the paved stones of the city, which soon gives way to the softer, uneven rhythm of the dirt road. The great city of Damascus, with its comforting familiarity and the seat of his power, shrinks behind him. Ahead lies the open road, a journey of several days leading into the heart of what is for all intents and purposes enemy territory. The landscape begins to change. They travel south, perhaps along the ancient route known as the King's Highway. The lush greenery, fed by the rivers of Damascus, gives way to a tougher, more arid land of rolling hills and rocky outcrops. Dust kicked up by the horses' hooves and the chariot wheels forms a constant gritty cloud that hangs over the caravan. The sun is relentless. The sounds are the creak of leather, the jingle of harnesses, the low murmur of the servants, and the steady rhythmic plodding of dozens of hooves. And inside this moving bubble of power, you can feel the war raging within Naaman himself. With every mile that separates him from his home, the hope that felt so potent in Damascus begins to feel more fragile, more thin. He is a man of the tangible, a man who trusts what he can see and touch. He can see the gold in his chests. He can feel the power of the soldiers surrounding him. These things are real. But the hope he is chasing it is based on a memory of a servant girl's words. Is an invisible, weightless thing. Doubt begins to creep in a cold shadow in the heat of the day. You can almost hear his thoughts. What am I doing? I am Naaman, commander of the armies of Aram, and I am pinning my entire future on the word of a child. I am marching into the land of our rivals, not as a conqueror, but as a beggar. They will laugh at me. This prophet, if he even exists, is probably a charlatan, a trickster who preys on the desperate. And I, the great Naaman, have become one of the desperate. He might run a hand over a hidden lesion under his tunic, the physical reminder of his vulnerability, and feel a fresh wave of despair. Perhaps this journey will only end in a deeper humiliation. But then another thought would arise, fanned by the smallest ember of faith. But what if she was right? What if there truly is a power in this land that is different from the powers I know the God of the Israelites, Their stories claim he parted a sea, that he fed a nation in the wilderness. These are tales of a God who intervenes in the world in ways the gods of Aram never do. And for a moment the hope would surge back a fragile warmth against the cold dread. This journey is a constant oscillation between these two poles, the cynical doubt of a worldly man and the desperate hope of a dying one. It is a journey we all take in our own way whenever we step out in faith, leaving the comfort of the known for the uncertainty of the divine promise. After several days of travel, the caravan crosses the border into the kingdom of Israel. The atmosphere shifts. The Aramean soldiers are now more alert, their hands closer to their swords. They are in foreign territory, and the symbols of their power are now a source of tension, not security. The local farmers and villagers who see this procession pass by would not see a man seeking healing. They would see the dreaded Aramean army, the very soldiers who had raided their lands and carried off their people just like the girl who started this whole journey. The irony is thick and poignant. Finally, they ascend the hills to their destination Samaria, the capital city of the northern kingdom. Samaria was a strong, fortified city built on a prominent hill by King Omri. It was a place of royal power, a rival to Damascus. As Naaman's grand procession approaches the city gates, you can imagine the stir it causes. A sentry on the wall would have seen the cloud of dust first, then the glint of spear points, and finally the banners of Aram. Panic would have ensued. A high-ranking Aramean military commander arriving unannounced with a full escort. This could only mean one thing: an ultimatum, a threat, the prelude to war. The gates would open not in welcome, but in tense, fearful necessity. Naaman's caravan rolls into the city, his chariot wheels echoing on the stones of a foreign capital. He does not seek out a humble abode or a quiet corner. He proceeds as instructed by his king directly to the palace of the king of Israel. His name at this time would have been Joram or Jehoram, a son of the infamous Ahab and Jezebel. Naaman, the commander, dismounts from his chariot. He is met by the officials of King Joram's court. He is a formidable presence, the embodiment of a foreign military superpower. He presents the letter from his master King Ben-Hadad. A royal scribe unrolls the parchment and reads it aloud to King Joram. Listen to the words of the letter and feel the chill they send through the room. It is not a polite request. It is a command layered with a thin veneer of diplomatic courtesy. It says, "Now, when this letter reaches you, know that I have sent to you Naaman, my servant, that you may cure him of his leprosy." The message is blunt, and its underlying assumption is clear. You, King of Israel, have this power at your disposal. I am sending you my general. Fix him. Ben-Hadad is treating the God of Israel as if he were a court magician and the king as his keeper. King Joram's reaction is immediate and visceral. He doesn't see a man in need. He doesn't see an opportunity for God to be glorified. He sees a political trap, a cunning and cruel pretext for invasion. His mind races. Cure him of leprosy. How can I do that? No king can do that. This is a setup. When I fail to do this impossible thing, Ben-Hadad will have his excuse to declare war. He seeks a quarrel with me. The king's terror and fury explode into a single dramatic act of public grief and desperation. He takes the collar of his royal robes in both hands and rips them from top to bottom. It is the ultimate sign of mourning, of helplessness, of a situation spiraling into catastrophe. His voice filled with panic rings through the throne room. And my God, he cries out to kill and to make alive, that this man sends a man to me to cure him of his leprosy. Just see. See how he is seeking a quarrel with me. The throne room is thrown into chaos. The hope that carried Naaman all the way from Damascus has just slammed into a wall of royal terror. He came seeking a miracle from the highest authority in the land, and that authority has just declared in the most dramatic way possible that the task is impossible and the request is a death sentence. The path of power, the one Naaman knows so well, has led to a dead end. The king of Aram's letter, intended to open doors, has instead revealed a gaping chasm between what man can command and what only God can do. Naaman stands in the middle of a foreign court, his vast treasure suddenly seeming useless, his military escort powerless, his hope collapsing into dust. He is more alone now than he has ever been. The silence that follows the king's outburst is the sound of absolute crushing failure. The king's cry, "And my God," hangs in the air of the throne room, a sharp echoing testament to human limitation. The torn fabric of his robes is a visible symbol of the torn hope in the chamber. You see Naaman standing amidst this royal chaos, a statue of frozen disbelief. The carefully constructed plan, backed by the power of 2 kings and a fortune in gold and silver, has disintegrated into a panicked accusation of political espionage. The path of power has led to a wall of fear. The silence that follows the king's outburst is heavy, thick with the weight of impossibility. For Naaman, this is a moment of profound desolation. He has journeyed all this way only to have the highest authority in the land declare his quest not only hopeless, but a fatal trap. But news in an ancient city, especially news as dramatic as this, travels faster than any royal messenger. A story of a foreign general, a king, tearing his robes, and an impossible request for healing it ripples out from the palace, through the corridors of power, into the markets, whispered from merchant to guard, from woman to child. It becomes the talk of Samaria. And this ripple of human drama, of fear and political tension, eventually reaches the one household in the city that operates on a different frequency. The news finds its way to the ears of Elisha, the man of God. You must picture him not in a palace or a temple, but in his own simple dwelling. He is the spiritual heir to the great prophet Elijah, a man who has inherited a double portion of his master's spirit. He has parted waters, purified a poisoned stew, and multiplied a widow's oil. He is a man who walks in a reality that intersects with the divine, a man for whom the veil between heaven and earth is thin. He is not surprised or panicked by the news. He is not concerned with King Joram's political anxieties. He sees the situation not as a crisis, but as an opportunity. He sees God's hand moving, creating an opening to reveal something true and powerful. And so Elisha acts. He does not go to the palace himself. He does not seek an audience with the terrified king. He simply sends a messenger with a question that is both a gentle rebuke and a profound declaration of faith. The message arrives at the palace, a calm voice in the storm of royal panic. The messenger speaks Elisha's words to King Joram. "Why have you torn your robes? Let him come now to me, that he may know that there is a prophet in Israel. Feel the power in those words. They are not boastful. They are a simple statement of fact from Elijah's perspective. He is gently chastising the king, not for his lack of healing power, but for his lack of faith. The king, who represents the pinnacle of earthly authority in Israel, has forgotten the true source of Israel's strength. He has forgotten that God is real and present and active through his chosen servants. Elijah's message completely reframes the narrative. This is not about a political quarrel between kings. This is about revealing the presence and power of the living God to a world that has forgotten him. Let him come to me, Elijah says, so that he, this powerful pagan commander, may know. The goal is not just to heal a man's body, but to open his eyes to a new reality. This message is relayed to Naaman. Imagine the commander, still reeling from the king's outburst, his mind likely preparing for the humiliating journey back to Damascus. And then this new instruction arrives, a strange postscript to a failed mission. He is not being sent home. He is not being arrested. He is being directed away from the center of power, away from the palace, to the home of some man called Elisha, a prophet. A flicker of something, perhaps not hope, but at least curiosity, stirs in him. He has exhausted the way of kings. Now a new unforeseen path has opened. And so, with a weary command, the great procession is set in motion once more. You are with him as his chariot rumbles out of the royal courtyard. But this time, the journey is different. It is not a triumphant arrival, but a confused, redirected search. The caravan of wealth and military might, which seemed so appropriate for a king's palace, now seems awkward and oversized as it navigates the narrower, more common streets of Samaria. People stare. They see the foreign soldiers, the magnificent horses, the symbols of Aramean power, and they see this entire grand display heading not towards a government building or a military barracks, but into a quiet residential part of the city. You travel with them, feeling the heavy sense of anticlimax. The destination, when you arrive, confirms it. There is no palace, no fortress, no grand temple. The procession halts before a humble, unassuming house. Take a moment to see this house through Naaman's eyes. It is likely a simple structure of mud brick or rough-hewn stone, perhaps with a flat roof where the family would sleep on hot nights. There is a single wooden door, weathered by the sun and rain. There are no guards, no attendants rushing out to greet him, no fanfare. A few chickens might be scratching in the dust nearby. The smell is of baking bread and common life, not of royal incense. This is the dwelling of the man who claimed he could succeed where a king had failed. The sheer ordinariness of the place is a profound statement in itself. It's a quiet lesson that God's power is not confined to the places we humans deem important. He does not need a throne room or a cathedral to do his work. His presence can fill the humblest of spaces. Naaman sits in his chariot, a mountain of worldly power parked before a molehill of a house. And he waits. He is the commander of Aram. He is a great man, an honored man. He has come with a king's letter and a king's ransom. He expects a certain protocol. Surely this prophet Elisha will come out. He will see the chariots, the horses, the treasure. He will show the proper respect. Perhaps he will perform some impressive, elaborate ritual. Naaman has a script in his head, a mental picture of how this encounter is supposed to unfold. He expects the prophet to come out to him, to stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, and wave his hand over the afflicted place and cure the leper. This is the transaction he has envisioned. He waits. The sun beats down. The horses shift their weight and jingle their harnesses. His soldiers stand at attention, looking utterly out of place. Minutes stretch into an uncomfortable eternity. The silence from the house is deafening. There is a profound spiritual truth at play here. Sometimes the first step in receiving from God is simply to wait, to be stripped of our own sense of urgency and our own timeline. We arrive with our demands and our expectations, and heaven is silent, asking us to first quiet our own striving. And then the door of the house opens. But it is not Elijah who emerges. It is a servant. Just a servant. We learn later that his name is Gehazi. He walks out, perhaps shielding his eyes from the glare of the sun reflecting off Naaman's chariot, and approaches the great commander. He does not bow and scrape. He simply delivers a message direct and unadorned. "Thus says my master," the servant announces, his voice clear in the stillness. "Go and wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh shall be restored to you, and you shall be clean." That's it. That's the entire message. No ceremony. No long incantations. No deference. No negotiation over the price. Just a simple, almost baffling command. Go wash in a river. The message is delivered, and the servant Gehazi simply turns and goes back into the house, closing the door behind him. Naaman is left there in his magnificent chariot, holding this bizarre, almost insulting instruction. And in that moment, something inside the great commander snaps. The fragile hope, the weary patience, it all evaporates, consumed by a hot, violent wave of pure rage. He is incandescent with fury. You can see it in the tightening of his jaw, the whitening of his knuckles as he grips the rail of his chariot. His voice, when it comes, is not a commander's controlled order, but a choked explosion of wounded pride. "Behold, I thought," he roars, the words tearing out of him. The Aramaic here conveys a sense of certainty, of indignant expectation. I had it all figured out. I had a scenario in my head. His anger is not just about the strange command. It is about his own script being completely ignored. Elijah has refused to play the part Naaman assigned him. "I thought he would surely come out to me," he sputters. This is the first wound, the personal slight. He, Naaman, commander of Aram, was not even worthy of a personal appearance. The prophet stayed inside his humble house and sent a subordinate. It is a profound insult to his status, a public humiliation in front of his own men. Then comes the second wound, the dashed religious expectation. "And stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, and wave his hand over the place, and cure the leprosy." He wanted a spectacle. He wanted magic. He wanted to see the power to witness the incantation, to be the center of a dramatic supernatural event. Instead, he got a mundane errand. Go take a bath. The command is so simple, so devoid of religious theater, that it feels like a mockery. And then the fury finds its third and deepest root, nationalistic pride. He turns his anger from the prophet to the instruction itself. The Jordan River, that muddy, unimpressive stream that marked the border of this upstart kingdom, His voice drips with contempt as he compares it to the majestic rivers of his own homeland. Are not the Abana and the Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? He sneers. You can hear the patriotic arrogance in his tone. The Abana, now called the Barada, was the lifeblood of Damascus, a crystal-clear river that created a lush oasis, making the city a jewel of the desert. The Pharpar to the south was similar. These were rivers to be proud of. To be told to go wash in the murky winding Jordan feels like being told that his own homeland is inferior. Could I not wash in them and be clean? His question is loaded with the poison of pride. He is not really asking a question about hydrology. He is making a statement about honor. My rivers are better than your river. My country is better than your country. Therefore, I should not have to humble myself by submitting to your inferior resources. It is the cry of an ego that cannot bear to be humbled. He has mistaken the instrument of healing for the source of healing. He thinks the quality of the water is what matters, failing to grasp that the power lies not in the river, but in the simple trusting act of obedience to the Word of God. How often do we do the same? We question God's methods because they seem too simple, too foolish, too beneath us. We want a grand solution, and God offers us a humble step of faith, and our pride, like Naaman's, rises up in indignation. The commander has made up his mind. This is the final insult. He has been ignored. His expectations have been dismissed, and his national pride has been wounded. He has had enough. With a sharp, furious command to his driver, he turns his chariot around. The entire grand procession, the horses, the soldiers, the mules laden with treasure, all begin to turn. He is leaving. He is storming away in a rage, his back turned on the only real hope he has ever been offered. The journey that began with a slave girl's whisper of hope is about to end in a commander's roar of pride. The treasure he brought to buy a cure remains in its chests, useless. The leprosy remains on his skin, a secret victor. He is choosing his pride over his healing, his anger over his life. You are there, witnessing this pivotal, tragic moment of decision as the wheels of his chariot begin to roll away from the humble house, away from the strange command, and away from the miracle that waits patiently in the muddy waters of the river Jordan. The air crackles with the aftermath of Naaman's rage. The chariot has turned, and the entire caravan, a magnificent beast of wealth and military might, is poised to retreat in a cloud of dust and wounded dignity. The moment is incredibly fragile. A lifetime of pride, a commander's ingrained sense of honor, and the deep sting of public humiliation have coalesced into a single, resolute decision to leave. The hope that carried him from Damascus is now a bitter ash in his mouth. From your unseen vantage point, you feel the tragic finality of this choice. He is so close, yet he is about to turn his back on his own miracle because it did not arrive in the packaging he expected. But in this critical moment, when the leader's pride threatens to doom the entire enterprise, another quiet act of courage unfolds. It comes not from the great commander, but from his own servants. These are the men who have journeyed with him, who have witnessed his private suffering, and who now witness his public fury. They are his subordinates, and to challenge a powerful, enraged man like Naaman is a dangerous act. Yet they choose to risk it. They do not remain silent. One or perhaps several of his servants approach him. They don't run up to the chariot shouting. You can picture them coming near with a quiet deference, a deep respect that allows them to speak a difficult truth. Their approach is gentle, their tone careful and wise. They do not challenge his anger directly. They do not tell him he is wrong or that his pride is foolish. Instead, they appeal to his own logic, the strategic mind of the commander they know so well. "My father," they begin. The term is one of profound respect and affection. It immediately softens the interaction, assuring him that they are speaking not as critics, but as loyal sons who have his best interest at heart. If the prophet had told you to do some great thing, would you not have done it? Let those words sink in. They are a masterpiece of gentle persuasion. They are holding up a mirror to Naaman's own heart. "Think about it," they are saying. "If Elijah had demanded you lead your army to conquer a fortified city as a price for your healing, you would have done it without hesitation. If he had asked you to build a grand temple in his God's honor, you would have marshaled the resources. If he had commanded you to undertake a perilous journey to the ends of the earth, your courage would not have failed. You are a man built for great, heroic, difficult tasks. You were ready for a monumental challenge." The servant's words subtly reframe his anger. They acknowledge his readiness to act, his capacity for great deeds. And then, having affirmed his strength, they present the paradox with beautiful simplicity. How much more than when he says to you, "Wash and be clean"? The question is brilliant. It lays bare the absurdity of his position. You were prepared to do something incredibly difficult, and now you are refusing to do something incredibly simple. The very smallness of the task is what has offended your pride. But isn't that illogical? The goal is not to perform a great feat. The goal is to be made clean. If this simple, undignified act is the path to the cure you so desperately seek, why would you reject it? Their appeal is a quiet invitation to look past the method and focus on the outcome. It's a timeless piece of wisdom sometimes. The most profound transformations are unlocked not by heroic effort, but by a simple act of humble obedience. We want to earn our blessings through grand gestures, and God simply asks us to receive them through a trusting step. Naaman hears them. In the midst of his burning rage, their respectful, logical words penetrate his wall of pride. He is a commander, after all, a man of reason and strategy. He can recognize the truth in their argument. The heat of his anger begins to cool, replaced by a grudging, dawning realization. They are right. His fury is irrational. What does he have to lose? By trying the alternative is to return to Damascus as he is to face the slow, inexorable march of the disease, to live out his days in quiet dread. The potential humiliation of washing in a muddy river is a small price to pay for even the slimmest chance of life. The decision hangs in the balance for a long moment. You can almost see the internal battle playing out on his face, the war between his ego and his desperation. Finally, with a sigh that carries the weight of his entire world, he yields. The prideful general gives way to the broken man in need of healing. A quiet command is given. The chariot which was aimed for home now turns again. The procession changes direction, heading not back towards the grand road to Damascus, but southeast towards the humble winding path that leads to the Jordan River. The journey to the Jordan is different from the journey to Samaria. The mood in the caravan has shifted. The arrogant confidence is gone, replaced by a fragile, uncertain obedience. The treasure in the carts now seems almost irrelevant. This is no longer a commercial transaction. It has become a raw test of faith. You travel with them down into the Jordan Valley, a deep rift in the earth's surface, a hot and humid trench. The landscape is sparse and rugged. Finally, you arrive at the banks of the river itself, and it is exactly as Naaman feared. The Jordan is not a majestic crystal-clear waterway like the rivers of Damascus. It is a slow-moving, winding river, its waters often murky and brown with the silt of the valley. The banks are muddy, overgrown with reeds and tamarisks. It is an ordinary river, a working river, a border. There is nothing magical or impressive about it. It looks for all the world like a poor choice for a divine bath. Naaman dismounts from his chariot. His soldiers and servants watch in silence. This is the moment of truth. He must now remove the symbols of his power and status. The ornate armor, the commander's tunic, the fine linen undergarments, all of it must come off. He stands there stripped bare, not just of his clothes, but of his identity. He is no longer Naaman, the commander, the great man, the hero of Aram. He is just Naaman, a man with a diseased body and a fragile sliver of hope. His leprosy, once his most guarded secret, is now exposed for all his men to see under the harsh light of the sun. This act of disrobing is the final necessary act of surrender. He must become completely vulnerable before he can be made whole. He steps towards the water's edge, the soft, squelching mud of the riverbank yielding under his feet. The water is not inviting. It is tepid and cloudy. He takes a breath and wades in. The command was specific: wash in the Jordan 7 times. The number 7 in Scripture is resonant. It is the number of divine completion, of perfection, of a finished work of God. It signifies that this is not a random act, but a divinely ordered process. He lowers himself into the water, a full immersion. The muddy water closes over his head. It is an act of burial, a symbolic death to his old self, the proud, self-reliant man. He comes up, sputtering water streaming from his hair and beard. He looks at his skin. Nothing. The white patches are still there. The deadened flesh is still numb. A wave of doubt, cold and sharp, must have pierced him. This is foolishness. It isn't working. He can feel the eyes of his men on him from the riverbank. The humiliation is intense. But the command was for 7 times. He has come this far. He will see it through. He takes another breath and goes down a second time. He emerges. He checks his skin. Still nothing. The disease stares back at him, mocking his obedience. A third time. He submerges himself, the water a muddy shroud. He comes up, hope warring with despair. He looks. No change. The leprosy remains. A 4th time. This is now an act of sheer stubborn will. He is fighting not just a disease, but the voice in his own head screaming that this is a cruel joke. A 5th time. Down into the murky depths. Up into the glaring sun. Nothing. His heart is sinking. The whispers of his servants, which had sounded so wise back in the city, now seem like hollow folly. A 6th time. He is exhausted emotionally and physically. The shame is a heavy cloak. He has made himself a fool in front of his men, dunking himself in a muddy river on the word of a strange prophet. He must be tempted to give up to storm out of the water and curse the prophet, the servants, and the God of Israel. One more time. The final number. He takes a deep final breath, a prayer and a plea, all in one, and forces himself under the water one last time. He goes down as Naaman the leper, the proud man, humbled the desperate man, obediently completing the final, seemingly pointless step of his instruction. And this time, when he breaks the surface of the water, something is different. The light feels different. The air on his skin feels different. He looks down at his arm, the place where the telltale whiteness of the disease has long mocked him. It's gone. He frantically scans his entire body. Every patch, every lesion, every numb spot of deadened flesh has vanished. The skin is not just healed, it is renewed, transformed. The scripture describes it with a beautiful, tender image. His flesh was restored like the flesh of a little child. His skin that is pure, soft, and new as if he has been reborn. The years of creeping decay have been washed away in an instant. He is not just cured, he is completely and perfectly clean. A great shuddering breath of pure, unadulterated joy escapes him. A cry, a laugh, a sob, all at once. He stands there, in the muddy Jordan water, dripping from his renewed body, a living miracle. The water was not magic. The power was in the obedience. It was in the surrender of his pride, the humbling of his spirit, and the simple trusting completion of the act God had commanded through his prophet. He had to be brought to the absolute end of his own strength, his own wisdom, and his own resources. He had to be stripped bare, literally and metaphorically, before he could be clothed in new life. His servants on the bank, who had watched this strange ritual with bated breath, now erupt in shouts of joy. The commander they had so bravely counseled is standing before them whole and clean. The tension of the past few minutes, the agonizing wait through each immersion, explodes into celebration. The journey that was fraught with so much doubt and anger has culminated in a moment of pure, undeniable divine grace. Naaman the leper is dead. Naaman, the child of God, has just been born in the humble waters of the Jordan. And this rebirth is not just of the skin, but of the soul. The man who emerges from that river is not the same man who entered it. The joyful shouts of Naaman's men echo in the Jordan Valley, a sound of pure, unscripted celebration that rises up with the river mist. Naaman himself stands in the water for a long moment, a man suspended between two worlds. He looks at his hands, turning them over and over in the sunlight. These are his hands, yet they are not. The skin is supple, the color is uniform and healthy, the texture is that of a young man, a child even. He touches his face, his arms, his chest, exploring the geography of his own redeemed body. It is a miracle, not just to be seen, but to be felt, a tangible reality that rewrites the story of his life. The journey back from the Jordan River to Samaria is a completely different experience from the one that brought him there. The weight of dread has been lifted from his shoulders, replaced by a lightness he hasn't felt in years. You are there with him in his chariot once more, but the atmosphere has been transformed. He is not just looking at the landscape now. he is truly seeing it for the first time. Every dusty shrub, every rugged rock formation, every bird that wheels in the vast blue sky above seems to be singing a song of praise. The world, which had been slowly turning gray with his despair, is now saturated with vibrant color. This is what true healing does. It doesn't just mend the body, it restores our vision, allowing us to see the beauty and grace woven into the fabric of creation once more. His gratitude is a palpable force, a warmth that radiates from him. It's a profound and humbling realization that the greatest gift he has ever received came to him not when he was powerful and strong, but when he was stripped bare, vulnerable, and obedient. The treasure in the carts following behind him, which on the way to the river seemed like a failed bribe, now feels different. It is no longer an instrument of commerce, but an expression of a heart overflowing. He is not going back to pay for a service. He is going back to give thanks for an unmerited, unimaginable gift. The caravan re-enters the city of Samaria, but there is no confusion this time. They know their destination. The procession once again makes its way through the streets and halts before the same humble house, the home of Elisha. The contrast is even more stark now. The magnificent worldly power of Naaman's escort and the profound otherworldly power that resides within the simple dwelling. Naaman does not wait in his chariot this time. He dismounts immediately, his movements eager and full of life. He walks to the door, not as a demanding general, but as a grateful pilgrim. And this time, Elisha comes out to meet him. You see the two men stand before each other. Naaman, the mighty warrior, his skin fresh and clean, his eyes shining with a new light. And Elijah, the man of God, his expression calm, serene, unsurprised. He is not looking at Naaman's skin. He is looking at his heart. Naaman's entire retinue stands with him, a crowd of witnesses to the miracle. And then Naaman speaks, his voice thick with emotion, but clear and strong. He makes a declaration that is not just a statement of fact, but a creed, the first article of his newfound faith. Behold, he says, his voice ringing with conviction, I know that there is no God in all the earth but in Israel. This is a seismic shift. This man, a polytheist from a land of many gods who worship the powerful storm god Hadad Rimmon, now declares his exclusive belief in Yahweh, the God of Israel. His healing was not just a physical event, it was a theological revelation. He has experienced a power and a grace that so utterly eclipsed everything he had ever known that it reordered his entire understanding of the cosmos. He has not just been cleansed, he has been converted. And out of this new conviction flows his overwhelming desire to give. He gestures to his servants, who step forward. They unlatch the heavy lids of the treasure chests. The afternoon sun catches the gleam of the contents, and a soft gasp might be heard from the onlookers. There are the bars of silver gleaming dully. There is the river of gold shining with a fiery brilliance. And there are the magnificent festival robes unfolded to display their rich colors and intricate embroidery. In it a king's ransom laid at the feet of a prophet in a dusty street. Please, Naaman insists, his voice earnest, accept a blessing from your servant. Notice his change in language. He no longer sees himself as a superior paying for a service. He calls the gift a blessing and offering of gratitude, and he calls himself Elisha's servant. The proud commander has truly learned humility. He desperately wants to give, to express the inexpressible gratitude that fills him. It is a natural human response to profound grace. When we are truly touched by a gift, we could never earn our hearts long to give something back in return. But Elisha's response is as firm as it is gentle. He raises a hand, not in dismissal, but in quiet, resolute refusal. "As the Lord lives before whom I stand," he says, his voice steady, "I will receive none." This is a solemn oath. Elisha is swearing by the name of the living God himself. He will not take the treasure. Naaman is taken aback. He urges him. He presses him. He cannot understand. This is a fortune. It could fund Elisha's ministry for a lifetime, feed the poor, build a school for the prophets. Why would he refuse it? Naaman's worldview is still partly shaped by the transactional nature of his old life. Great deeds deserve great rewards. But Elisha understands something more profound. Here lies a deep and critical spiritual lesson. Elisha refuses the gift for several reasons. First, and most importantly, he must protect the integrity of God's grace. The healing was a free gift. It cannot be bought. If he accepts the payment, it turns the miracle into a transaction, reducing the God of heaven to a merchant selling cures. It would cheapen the magnificent unmerited grace that Naaman has just experienced. It could plant a dangerous seed in Naaman's new faith, leading him to believe that his wealth can influence God. Elisha is teaching him in this moment that you cannot put a price tag on a gift from the Almighty. Grace, by its very nature, is free. Second, Elisha is protecting his own prophetic office. In a world full of charlatans who used religious claims to enrich themselves, Elisha had to be above reproach. His power came from God, not from a desire for personal gain. His refusal was a powerful testimony to everyone watching Naaman's men and the people of Samaria that his motives were pure. He served God, not mammon. Naaman, seeing the unshakable resolve in the prophet's eyes, finally relents. He understands, perhaps not fully, but he accepts the refusal. His gratitude, however, still needs an outlet. And so, he makes a second, very strange request. If he cannot give a gift, he will ask for one. If not, Naaman says his mind working to find a new way to express his new loyalty. Please let your servant be given 2 mule loads of earth. This is a fascinating and beautiful request. To our modern ears, it sounds bizarre. Why would a rich man want 2 cartloads of common dirt? But in the ancient world, this was a request pregnant with meaning. The common belief at the time was that a god's power and presence were geographically bound to their land. To worship Yahweh in Naaman's mind, you needed to be on Yahweh's soil. He is about to return to Damascus, a pagan land, to the court of a pagan king. He knows he will be surrounded by the temples and idols of Aram. So he wants to take a piece of Israel, the holy ground, where he met the true God, back with him. He plans to build an altar in Damascus, an altar made of Israelite earth, upon which he can offer sacrifices and worship the Lord. It is a tangible, physical way for him to create a sacred space, an embassy of heaven in the midst of a foreign land. It is a sign of his radical commitment. He is not just adopting a new belief, he is adopting a new way of life and worship. He vows to Elisha, "For your servant will no longer offer burnt offering or sacrifice to other gods, but to the Lord." His monotheism is now explicit and absolute. This is a beautiful picture of a new faith. It may be theologically simple, even a bit superstitious by later standards, but it is sincere and passionate. God meets us where we are and honors the sincere, if imperfect, steps we take toward Him. Having made this vow, however, a shadow of concern crosses Naaman's face. His new faith immediately collides with the political reality of his old life. He has a problem, an ethical dilemma he cannot solve on his own. He explains it to Elisha. "In this matter, may the Lord pardon your servant when my master the king goes into the house of Rimmon to worship there, leaning on my arm, and I bow myself in the house of Rimmon. When I bow myself in the house of Rimmon, the Lord pardon your servant in this matter." You can feel his anxiety. His job requires him to be the king's right-hand man. When the king of Aram goes to worship his chief god Rimmon, he physically leans on his commander's arm for support. It is a state ceremony. If the king bows to the idol, Naaman, as his support, will be forced to bow as well. It is a political act, not an act of personal worship, but the physical gesture is the same. His heart will be with the Lord on his altar of earth, but his body will be bowing in a pagan temple. He is torn between his duty to his earthly king and his loyalty to his heavenly king. He is asking for grace in advance for a compromise he feels he cannot avoid. This is a remarkably honest and relatable struggle. How often do our own newfound convictions clash with the demands of our jobs, our families, or our cultures? We live in a fallen world, and navigating it with integrity is not always simple. Elisha's response to this tormented plea is one of the most beautiful and grace-filled moments in the story. He does not give him a complex set of rules. He does not lecture him on the evils of idolatry or demand that he resign his post immediately. He doesn't burden this brand new believer with a standard of perfection he cannot yet bear. Instead, Elisha gives him a gift of profound peace. He simply says, "Go in peace." It is a response of immense pastoral wisdom. Elisha trusts God to continue the work he has begun in Naaman's heart. He is releasing Naaman into the care of God's ongoing grace, not a rigid set of laws. He understands that discipleship is a journey, not a single event. "Go in peace" is an affirmation of God's understanding and a blessing for the complicated road ahead. And so Naaman departs. His servants load the 2 mules with sacks of Israelite soil. The great commander, now a humble worshiper of Yahweh, turns his caravan around and begins the long journey home to Damascus, his body healed, his soul reborn, his heart at peace. The procession moves off, a cloud of dust rising behind it, until it is just a speck on the horizon. But the story is not over. The camera, as it were, does not follow Naaman. It stays behind at the humble house in Samaria. Elisha goes back inside his work for the day complete. But someone else has witnessed this entire exchange with a very different heart. You now turn your attention to Gehazi, the servant of Elisha. He stood by his master's side. He saw the overflowing gratitude of the healed commander. He saw the chests of gold and silver, a life-altering fortune. And he saw his master Elisha turn it all away with a wave of his hand. And in Gehazi's heart, a seed of bitter resentment begins to sprout. He cannot comprehend Elisha's perspective. He sees it not as spiritual integrity, but as foolishness, a squandered opportunity. You can almost hear the toxic inner monologue beginning to spin in his mind. My master is too soft. He has spared this Aramean, this man, from the nation that raids our lands and enslaves our people. And after this man receives the greatest miracle imaginable, my master just lets him walk away, taking all that wealth with him. We live so simply, so humbly. We are the ones who serve the Lord. Don't we deserve a reward? Isn't it only fair that some of that treasure should stay here with the people of God? It is the ancient seductive whisper of greed, wrapped in the language of justification. He isn't just stealing for himself, he tells himself. He's correcting his master's mistake. He is claiming what is rightfully theirs. The sight of all that wealth offered and then refused has ignited a fire of covetousness in his soul that he cannot extinguish. He watches the dust cloud of Naaman's caravan shrinking in the distance, and a decision hardens within him. He makes an oath, a dark parallel to the holy oaths of Elisha and Naaman. As the Lord lives, Gehazi mutters to himself, twisting a sacred phrase to justify his profane intent. I will run after him and get something from him. The contrast is devastating. Naaman, the pagan, is leaving with a heart full of true worship. Gehazi, the servant of the prophet who lives at the very epicenter of God's miracles, is now consumed by a heart full of worldly greed. He has seen the miracle, but he has completely missed the message. He has valued the treasure more than the testimony. Without another word, Gehazi slips away from the house. He begins to run. You see him, a lone figure, hurrying down the road, his robes hitched up his feet, pounding the dusty earth. He is running after the very wealth his master declared holy and untouchable. He is running toward a lie, chasing a deception of his own making, and with every step he is running away from the presence of his master and the quiet integrity of his God. The sun beats down on him as he races to catch the departing caravan, his heart pounding, not with excitement for God, but with a lust for gold. The dust of Naaman's departing caravan is still a faint cloud on the horizon as Gehazi runs, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs. The afternoon sun is hot, and the road is long, but his greed gives him an unnatural energy. He is not just running, he is pursuing. He is chasing down the physical embodiment of the temptation that has taken root in his soul. In your mind's eye, you see the contrast in this single image, Naaman's procession moving forward in peace and newfound faith, while the servant of the man of God races behind them, driven by a secret, festering desire. It's a poignant picture of how two people can witness the exact same act of God and walk away with entirely different transformations. One is transformed by grace, the other corrupted by greed. Naaman, from his chariot, looks back. Perhaps it is a final, grateful glance towards the land that gave him new life. Or perhaps it is simply the instinct of a military commander surveying his surroundings. He sees a lone figure running frantically after them. His military mind would immediately assess the situation. A single man running, not an ambush. A messenger, he gives the command, and the entire magnificent caravan, chariots, horsemen, and pack animals grinds to a halt. Naaman, the great commander, does not send a subordinate to meet the runner. In a beautiful display of his newfound humility, he himself gets down from his chariot to greet the approaching man. He recognizes him. It is the servant of the prophet Elisha. Naaman's first thought is surely one of concern. Has something happened to the man of God? Has the king caused trouble? His question is immediate and anxious. Is all well? Gehazi arrives, breathless and panting, a picture of contrived urgency. He has rehearsed his story, a lie carefully constructed to play on Naaman's kindness and reverence for the prophet. Now he delivers it, his words tumbling out in a rush to make them sound authentic. All is well. He begins calming Naaman's immediate fear. Then he launches into his fabrication. My master has sent me to see just now. 2 young men of the sons of the prophets have come to me from the hill country of Ephraim. This is a clever lie filled with plausible details. The sons of the prophets were communities or guilds of men who studied and served under a senior prophet like Elisha. They were often poor and itinerant. The idea that 2 of them would arrive unexpectedly seeking aid was entirely believable. It paints Elisha as a man with sudden unforeseen needs, providing a perfect excuse for him to have changed his mind about accepting a gift. Having set the stage, Gehazi makes his request. Please give them a talent of silver and 2 changes of clothing. Notice the details of his greed. He could have asked for a few small coins, but his mind is still full of the vast treasure he witnessed. He asks for a talent of silver, an enormous sum, 75 pounds, or more of it, a fortune far beyond the needs of 2 poor students. And he asks for 2 changes of festival garments, the ultimate symbols of wealth and status. His covetousness has made him bold. He is trying to get for himself a significant piece of the treasure his master refused. Naaman's response is immediate and generous. He is so full of gratitude, so eager to do anything for the prophet who saved him, that he does not question the story for a second. In fact, he is delighted to have an opportunity to give. His heart overflows. He hears the request for 1 talent of silver, and in his joyful generosity, he insists on giving more. Please, Naaman urges, take 2 talents. He doesn't just grant the request, he doubles it. This is the nature of a grateful heart. It does not calculate or measure. It gives freely and abundantly. He is pressing Gehazi to accept more than he even asked for. The irony is staggering. The generous, honest heart of the new convert is being exploited by the greedy, deceitful heart of the lifelong servant of God. Naaman himself personally oversees the packing of the gift. He has his servants bind 2 talents of silver, a heavy load of perhaps 150 pounds, into 2 separate bags. He takes 2 of the magnificent sets of festival robes and gives them to Gehazi. The weight of the silver is so great that Gehazi cannot possibly carry it all himself along with the robes. So Naaman, in his kindness, assigns 2 of his own servants to carry the treasure for Gehazi to escort him back and ensure the gift arrives safely. Gehazi is now in a difficult position. His secret mission has suddenly acquired an official escort. He walks back towards Samaria, flanked by Naaman's servants, who carry the heavy bags of his ill-gotten gains. He is a walking lie, and his lie is being carried for him by the very men he has deceived. With every step, the weight of the silver is a physical reminder of the weight of the sin he has just committed. As they approach the city, Gehazi knows he must get rid of his escorts. He cannot arrive at Elisha's house with 2 of Naaman's men carrying a fortune in silver. His deception would be instantly exposed. He stops them at a place called the Hill, or the Ophel, a fortified part of the city. He takes the bags of silver and the robes from them there. He thanks them and dismisses them, sending them back to rejoin Naaman's caravan. They depart, oblivious to the true nature of the transaction. Now, Gehazi is alone with his treasure. He doesn't take it into the house. He knows better. He finds a secret place, a hiding spot within the house or nearby, perhaps a storeroom or buried under the floor. He carefully stows away the silver and the fine garments, concealing the evidence of his sin. He is trying to create a separation between his public life as Elisha's servant and his secret life as a man of hidden wealth. It's a futile effort, a spiritual truth that what is done in darkness will eventually be brought into the light. Having hidden his loot, he composes himself. He smooths his robes, wipes the sweat and dust from his face, and tries to assume an air of nonchalant innocence. He then walks into the presence of his master Elijah. He stands before him, ready to act as if nothing has happened, as if he has just been attending to his normal duties around the house. Elisha is sitting in the quiet of his room. He looks up at his servant. There is no anger in his eyes, only a deep, penetrating sorrow. He asks a simple, direct question. "Where have you been, Gehazi?" The question itself is an offer of grace. It is an invitation to confess. Elijah already knows. The question is, for Gehazi's sake, to give him one last chance to bring his sin into the light himself. But Gehazi is too deep in his deception. He has hidden the silver. Now he must hide the truth with another lie. His response is quick and casual. "Your servant went nowhere." It is a blatant, foolish lie spoken to a man who walks with God. And with that final lie, Gehazi seals his fate. The time for grace has passed, and the time for consequence has arrived. Elisha's voice is quiet, but it carries the weight of divine authority and profound disappointment. "Did not my heart go with you?" he asks, when the man turned from his chariot to meet you. Gehazi freezes. The words pierce him like a sword. Elisha saw it all. Not with his physical eyes, but with his spiritual sight. The spirit of the prophet had followed him down the road, had stood beside him as he lied to Naaman, had watched him take the silver, and had shadowed him as he hid it away. There is no hiding from the eyes of God or from the one who stands in his counsel. Elijah's voice continues, filled not with rage, but with a sorrowful, rhetorical questioning that exposes the very heart of Gehazi's sin. Is this a time to receive money and to receive clothing, olive groves and vineyards, sheep and oxen, male and female servants? Elisha is painting a picture of the life Gehazi had dreamed of when he took the silver. He wasn't just taking money. He was grasping for a lifestyle. He wanted land, livestock, servants, the life of a wealthy landowner. He wanted the security and status that money could buy. And Elisha's question hangs in the air. Is this the time for? That is this the moment, right after God has performed a mighty free miracle to reveal his glory to a pagan nation, for you, my servant, to be focused on enriching yourself. You have taken a moment of sacred revelation and cheapened it with your profane greed. You have put a price tag on the grace of God and sought to profit from his power. The room is silent. Gehazi has nothing to say. His lies have been stripped away, and his sin is laid bare before him. And then Elijah pronounces the consequence. It is not a punishment born of anger, but a consequence that flows directly, poetically, and tragically from the sin itself. Therefore, Elisha says, his voice heavy with the sorrow of the judgment, the leprosy of Naaman shall cling to you and to your descendants forever. Gehazi coveted Naaman's wealth. Now he will inherit Naaman's disease. He wanted the material possessions of the man who was healed, and so he will receive the very affliction from which that man was so gloriously delivered. It is a terrible fitting irony. The physical sign of Naaman's brokenness and desperation, the very thing that drove him to seek the God of Israel, now becomes the outward sign of Gehazi's spiritual corruption. Greed, the leprosy of the soul, will now manifest as leprosy of the skin. As Elisha speaks these final words, a horrifying transformation begins. Gehazi feels a change come over him. He looks down at his hands, the very hands that took the silver and hid it away. The skin is turning pale, then a stark, deathly white. The disease is not creeping in slowly as it did with Naaman. It is a sudden, catastrophic affliction. He is being consumed by it in an instant. The scripture gives a final chilling description. So he went out from his presence, a leper, as white as snow. He stumbles out of the room, out of the presence of his master, a ruined man. He is now everything that Naaman was before his healing, an outcast, unclean, a man with no future. He gained 2 talents of silver and 2 sets of robes, but he lost everything that truly mattered: his health, his community, his calling, his relationship with the man of God, and his standing before God himself. The fine robes he hid away are useless to him now. He must wear the torn rags of a leper. The silver he coveted cannot buy him a cure. He chased after a fleeting material gain, and in doing so, he traded away his very life. The story ends here on this somber, heartbreaking note. It is a gentle but firm lesson, a quiet tragedy that unfolds in the shadow of a great miracle. It serves as a timeless, sorrowful warning. The story of Naaman shows us the beautiful transformative power of God's grace, a grace that can heal any disease and humble any pride, a grace that is offered freely to all who will receive it with a simple, obedient heart. But the story of Gehazi, intertwined with it, reminds us that it is possible to stand in the very presence of God's power and miss the point entirely. It reminds us that greed is a subtle, corrosive disease of the soul that can lead us to devalue the sacred and trade eternal worth for temporary wealth. As you prepare for sleep, let this ancient story settle in your heart. Let it be a reminder of the beautiful, simple path of healing that Naaman found through humility. And let it be a gentle caution, a call to examine our own hearts to ensure that we are chasing after the giver of all good gifts and not just the gifts themselves. May your rest be peaceful, and may you awaken with a heart oriented not toward the fleeting treasures of this world, but toward the eternal grace of the God who makes all things new.